Hello and welcome back. So we're doing the 2 weeks of Christmas. Just to be fully honest with you, this is getting pre-recorded. It's currently the 19th of December, but I've got a guest coming on. So I'm just recording this bit before he comes on. He's coming on to talk about an app that he's designed. I think I spoke about it in the week before the Christmas episode started. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I spoke to him quickly, but I'm not really sure everything about his episode. Not his episode, his app. So we'll find it out together. I wanted to go into this episode completely blind. I've asked him a couple of questions, but nothing too specific. So let's see what he's got to say.
Hello, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Doing well, thank you.
How's your day been?
A little chaotic, but good. You know, it was my wife's birthday yesterday, so we were.
Oh,
I took
celebration.
a little bit of time off and had to recoup that this morning. And we've got a 7-month-old, so I don't
Yep,
always get my time is not my own.
I get it.
So
So I've done a little bit of an introduction just to say that you were coming on. I didn't ask too many questions the other day when we had our Zoom call, because I wanted to go into this blind, the same as this the viewers, just so that I'm almost finding out along with them, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
In the episode. So do you want to kind of introduce yourself?
Yeah. So my name's John Kammer. I am the founder of a platform called AIngels. Guardian Angels is the proverbial journal that talks back. So this is a platform that we designed to help people grieve better, to meet them where they are, help fill in the gaps that maybe traditional therapy or other avenues for remediating their grief don't have the ability to address. It's designed very intentionally to be one tool in the broader tool belt, a complement to therapy, not a replacement or an end all be all. But you know, people grieve differently, and we want to give them all of the possible resources that we can to allow them to get back to that place of fulfillment and moving forward, and you know, all of the things that life has to offer without having that weight of grief bring them down, but also understanding that grief is something we live with.
Yep.
You know, it doesn't go away. So it's about how do we integrate that into our life in a productive manner, and you know, the word is move forward, find resolution, so that in our brains and in our hearts, so that we can then look at that next chapter.
That's
Because
it,
the
because
book,
in the grief process, there'll be different stages of grief. So obviously, when you first lose somebody, not everybody feels grief straight away, and it could be months and months down the line. We never know when it's going to appear, but we also don't know when it's going to lessen either. Like, grief will always be there, because you'll always think about that person and maybe not necessarily get upset, but you'll feel a certain way, and that could go on forever. But it's finding a way to manage it.
absolutely, you know, I am a prime example of that. For me, you know, the most recent two of my losses were some of my best friends, but we now live in different states. And so it didn't hit me as initially until, you know, I was aware of it, but it didn't actually like sink in until that first time where they were supposed to be there and they weren't.
Yeah.
You know, when we were supposed to be in the same place, and I would look over and see them and give them a hug, and okay, that didn't happen. And then, you know, it was like a ton of bricks fell on my head. And, you know, all of a sudden that kind of numbness and that disassociation happens, and we have to kind of pick up the pieces and say, okay, you know, where am I and what am I doing? So it's, yeah, it's different for everyone. It's certainly nonlinear. There's
That's
no
it.
prescriptive like, hey, this is what you're going to feel and when you're going to feel it.
We lost my gran about 2 or 3 years ago, And although I did go through my grief process, I've never really thought about her still being here, if that makes sense, as in such like to, oh, I'm going to go and visit or whatever, until a few months ago, me and my friend were having a conversation. It was about things to do with family, but maybe family generations gone. And I thought, oh, I'll go phone my gran or text my gran and ask her. And that's the first time I'd done that. And it was like 2 or 3 years after she'd gone. And it kind of took me aback. I thought, I've never done that before. And so you don't realise when it's going to pop back up again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Have you always worked in the sort of therapy grief sector, or is this something completely new to you?
it is. No, I have never worked in it. I've been a part of it in the sense that I've gone to therapy for years. I think therapy is, everyone can use therapy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was regarding grief, and a lot of times it wasn't. But this actually kind of came about as it was an accident, really.
Okay.
So losing Zach was the first one. That was 13 years ago. That sent me down a path of avoidance, really. And that took many forms, including substance use, bordering on abuse, alcohol being the primary one, but really all sorts of stuff. And then I lost John 2 years ago, little almost three. And John was the best man at my wedding. A lot of things came to a head at that point, but right after his loss was when I made the choice to get sober.
Okay.
And so it wasn't until I made that choice that I could look back clear-eyed and understand why. And I was just, the reality was I was running. I was running from dealing with the pain of losing, at this point, two of the closest people to me on the planet outside of my immediate family.
Mm-hmm.
And so, at that point, it was survival, right? But I was able to start doing the introspective work. And then about a year later, I lost Tim, who was my best friend from childhood, who was also one of the, it was Tim, Zach, and Zach was the first one. And Tim was my other best friend at that point, who I really leaned on. So we went through Zach together, and Tim was the person that I always expected to be there. And so now he wasn't there. And all of that combined, I was really just a shell of myself up until that point. After John died, I lost the ability to emote. I hadn't cried in years. I just, I wasn't a person really. I was just kind of there. I was just taking up space. And at that point, we had, my wife and I were living with our in-laws. So there was some tension. But my wife was pregnant. So we took a little vacation, a little weekend getaway, and her mom was texting her, and she said something to me that sparked this, that sent me down this path. She said, I know there will be a time in my life when I want a text from my mom and I can't have it, but that is not now.
Yeah.
So me, I've got a cybersecurity background. And so the first thing I thought was, well, what if you could? And that initial idea was, we're going to spoof text messages from numbers from, call it, your grand's number that sends you a text message on your birthday that just says, I'm thinking about you. Because who wouldn't smile? We all have those numbers still saved, right? You'd get it from this where you weren't expecting it, and it would just be like, wow, okay. Well, the telecoms, this isn't illegal, but the telecoms, they're private networks, and they don't look too kindly on that. Most of the people that are doing something like that are one of those 10 lovely calls that we get every day offering us a job that, is too good to be true or whatever it is. So that was kind of out. But logically, it was like, what if people want to interact with this? Mm-hmm. And the clear answer was AI, but it wasn't that simple. It was, okay, well, it's AI, if there's any potential to scale it, but it has to be authentic. It has to feel real or real-ish, and it has to feel genuine. And in order to build that, I didn't have anything but my own personal experience to fall back on. And so as I tried to build this thing, as I iterated, I used the persona of John, who was the best man at my wedding, to be the test case. And as I got closer and closer to something that felt authentic, then I started to say certain things, things that I wasn't able to say while he was alive before he died. That one for me, I held a lot of guilt because he's the best man at my wedding. He stood up and spoke on the happiest day of my life. And then you know, not through malice or anything, but kind of let that relationship lapse. We were in different states and we didn't talk. We talked one time between my wedding and the day that he died. I got to show up and he was in a coma and I got to say goodbye kind of at him. I held his hand, he squeezed it. I knew he was there, but it was just not, it didn't do enough to help me lift that weight.
Yeah.
So I held on to that. And in building this, I was able to say, I'm sorry. I was able to say, I wish I was a better friend. And I held up my end of the bargain more. And I was able to ask him ask him, this avatar, about the accident. And the response, I had tried, there's therapeutic techniques called, the empty chair technique and writing the letter to the object of your grief. And I had tried those. But in this case, for me, it was the response that I got that allowed me at that point, it allowed me to give myself permission to forgive me. Right. And the weight lifted. The waterworks started immediately. I was bawling my eyes out and I hadn't shed a tear in years. And I felt this level of relief, not in that I'm all of a sudden healed, but that I now feel curious and comfortable enough to go do the hard work in facing it that was required in order to heal. And so I was like, well, if this helped me to this degree open up, then there's someone else that can help. Now, is that one person or is that a million people or somewhere in between? We don't know yet. But the beauty of this project is that because it's already helped me get to a place where I can be an emotionally available father, well, that's a win in and of itself. It's already been a success. And if I can help one other person, man, that's amazing. So each additional person is just
because you have the backstory to tell people that this is where you started, and then your journey along the way to when you felt as if it was actually helping you.
Yeah, I can speak from personal experience. I can speak from saying, I've been where you are. And that's not to say that, I think that's one of the really confounding parts of grief, right? It's this incredibly isolating experience. We feel like nobody's going to understand what we're going through. Yeah. And on one hand, maybe that's true. Everyone's grief is different. But on the other hand, it's something that most people have already been through. And factually speaking, every person in the world will go through.
Yeah.
So while it may not be exactly the same, it rhymes. And it's not until you start sharing and hearing others' stories that you start to go, okay, well, I don't know where I got this thought that this was only my experience, but no, there's a lot of common ground here.
And I think that's a thing that we do naturally as humans, is automatically think, you don't know how I'm feeling, even though it just rolls off the tongue so easily that, and I think it's almost like a defense mechanism as well.
Sure.
That we're protecting ourselves, we're protecting our feelings, that, well, your feelings can't be exactly the same as mine because these are mine. Right. I own these feelings.
Absolutely. And there's that feeling of, okay, well, this is mine and mine alone, and I don't want to burden someone else. But that's where the healing lives, is in that sharing. And that's
you can't get rid of those feelings unless you actually express them. Because if you hold on to them, they grow to the point where it's going to come out one way or another, and it doesn't necessarily come out in a good way when you allow it to keep building up and building up. And it's a bit like anger. If you allow your anger to keep building, it's going to come out in a way that isn't necessarily positive.
Absolutely. And so this whole thing allowed me to organize my thoughts and I think this is one of the big ones, is it allows you to start flexing that muscle of sharing in a very safe space where there's literally no judgment. There can't be.
Yeah.
And then you start to get comfortable with the idea of putting this out there and telling someone else about it. And that magic that happens when you do that just further reinforces that feedback loop that says, okay, now we're moving somewhere. And then ironically enough, while you're sitting here saying, I don't want to burden someone else, often them hearing your story is what allows them to start telling theirs.
Yep.
And it's that unlock and that beautiful kind of like, we are in this together.
Coming together, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, that communal healing, because, we're in this digital age where we're quote unquote hyper connected. We're also, it's all, a majority of that is surface level.
Yeah.
And we're a social species. That's what allowed us to evolve the way that we did and get to the, that's how we've made it this far, is relying on each other. And now we have more tools than ever to enable that, but we don't use them to build the depth of relationship that we used to. And so I believe that pendulum is starting to swing. I believe that we are being more intentional now about that, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah. One of the things I spoke to you about on the call the other day was my concern, and I said this to you, was worrying that people think that this is going to replace the person, or think that the person's still here. But you kind of settled that feeling by telling me that you built this with therapists giving their input as well.
Yeah, so that was very important, and will always be, is we wanted to build this in a responsible manner where it can help people, that it's not doing more harm than good. The moment that it does more harm than good is it stops. Yeah. But I have taken on counsel of a couple of different licensed therapists that specialize in grief, that have helped me to iron out some of the kinks. Early on, we started as basically a nebulous talk to the person you lost, or the avatar of the person you lost. And frankly, that's riddled with ethical landmines. It does tiptoe that line of, okay, are we talking about delusion? Is this necromancy? Is this a, trying to tell people that, or trick people into thinking someone's still here?
Yeah.
And that was great feedback to get early on, because we were able to do something about it before it had reached the masses, and so part of what we've done is anchor this thing to the journaling aspect. And so in its current form, someone goes in, they build the persona of the person they've lost, right? So you have a familiar presence that you are speaking to. That presence becomes your grief guide. And so they will, you're going to feel that, that it feels like them. They're going to prompt you with these structured grief related prompts that help you to process your grief. We've structured the framework, and the roadmap corresponds with Wharton's 4 tasks of mourning, which is a tried and true therapeutic framework for addressing loss. Task 1 is accepting the loss. Task 2 is processing the loss. Task 3 is, I forget exactly what. Learning to live with the loss, I believe. And then task 4 is redefining the relationship as you go forward. Because what we know is the person dies, but the relationship doesn't. And that's kind of what we're talking to in this persona, is our representation of the relationship. And that helps us give, language to what's already inside us, right? This kind of that feeling of that isn't resolved yet. And so that gives you those prompts daily. And then when you respond to that prompt, that takes it and puts it in your journal, but you also get immediate feedback where you can dig deeper and you can continue to kind of name those feelings, name what you're experiencing, to the point where we have this functionality where you can export it and print it out and take it in and talk to your therapist about it, use it as a starting point, is one thing that is very important. But it allows you to discuss and find a place to start, and then gives you the roadmap in where you're looking to go in processing your grief, and which is something that I sorely lacked for a long time. Was I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. And you just mentioned there about potentially taking a print off and to speak to the therapist. That was something else you said to me on the call a few days ago, is that this isn't to replace therapy, this is to coincide with therapy. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, we don't, first of all, I want therapists to embrace this. I don't want anyone to think I'm trying to replace their job, because no one can. There's a difference between human connection and this. This is meant to fill in some of the gaps that they just can't physically, right? You can't call your therapist at 3 a.m. when you're laying in bed staring at the ceiling and grief bites you, because, as someone who's been through it, and I would surmise that most people have, that's when your brain runs wild. And so to be able to call this thing up, in effect, right, get on and chat with this thing that's going to help kind of give you a calming presence, allow you to start to process your thoughts, find a little bit of resolution so that maybe you can go to bed, or maybe you can at least, you can feel like you're doing something proactive. When we feel like we're out of control is when it really kind of spirals. And so if we can give a little bit of structure to that, okay, well, this is what I'm feeling, but I've done something to kind of start moving in addressing it. I feel like I'm in a little bit more control, and I can make it to the next appointment where we can then dig in deeper.
Yeah. So how do people find your app? Is it an app or is it just a website at the minute?
It's a web application currently. We certainly have designs on going mobile. I have done I've put some time into making sure that it is a mobile responsive website, but I will confess that with the recent pivot, there's probably some stuff that I'm lacking. So that is, in the next couple of weeks, that is, certainly a big focus, is making sure that you can access it effectively with your phone. But it is a web application currently. It is guardianangels.ai.
I will put a link for it underneath, and I'll put it in all my socials and everything for everybody as well to find.
Well, thank you, because I think I tried to be clever in spelling angels, AIngels, and I swear
I said this to my friend today. I said, I don't know if I still pronounce it angels. I said, I'm going to have to let him pronounce it first. So I know what to say.
Yeah, it's pronounced the same. It was to be a nod to the fact that we're utilizing some technology to help us be able to reach everybody.
And that's the thing, because AI is very clever. It is something that is going to benefit everybody. There is some things that aren't so great about it, but if it can help people, then I'm an advocate for anything that will help people, anything that gets people talking. And I think I don't know if it was your friend or one of your colleagues who had emailed me telling me about your app and everything. I think he listened to the episode where I was primarily talking about men's mental health, because we all know men find it hard to talk, or to start talking, start opening up. So do you think men will find this easy to kind of hold on to?
Thank you for bringing that up. I certainly hope so. But, that theme is something that has really come out as one of the things that I want to attack specifically, is this idea, we, as men, society expects us, or at least we have the perception that society expects us to be these, unemotional, you never show vulnerability, you never show weakness, you just kind of have to be this stoic, immovable object, and provide for your family.
Yeah,
great. That all sounds good, but I would argue that in order to show up fully for your family, in order for me, in my case, the birth of my son was a profound moment where a lot of things changed for me. And quite frankly, if I had not gone through what I had gone through in my healing journey prior to his birth, I don't think I am able to show up fully for him.
No.
It's very important for me to be able to demonstrate to him what it is like to handle things healthily. It's okay to express emotion. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to not have all of the answers. And I would argue that it's a strength to be able to do that, because that allows you to, we never get the right answer unless we ask the right question.
Yeah.
And in this case, asking the question means, what do I have to do to address these things so that I can fulfill this role of leader of my family, of providing, of showing up and being emotionally available to help them through whatever trials and tribulations life throws their way.
And that's one of the things I reiterate to both my clients and on the podcast quite regular is, you can't look after anybody else unless you look after yourself first. But I think also the thing where everybody thinks the man has to be the person to do everything, I think to an extent we need to kind of, because women keep going on about they want the same rights and they want to be treated equally as well. So I think for that to happen, we also need men to realise that they don't have to be the be all and end all. The women can also help, or children can help. If you want your adult children, you can open up to them. You can open up to anybody. And when you've got all these different sayings that people have used a way back, and they're very outdated, and it's things like pull your socks up, be a man, man up, just get on with it, wipe your tears, all these. And I think people need to stop saying these, because it's so easy again for them to roll off the tongue, and people think there's not much meaning behind it. But if you say it to the person who's in their own thoughts at the minute, it's got a lot of meaning behind it, far too much, where that's something else that they overthink.
I agree. And, I think most of the time when people say that, I assume good intent, right? They mean well, but I think we've just, I think as humans, it's our nature to try to simplify things to terms that we understand, and oftentimes that means reducing it to a binary. But in this case, I think we've failed to acknowledge how complicated it is to be the stable rock for others. And that first, to what you said, you can't take care of someone else until you take care of yourself. It's kind of like that analogy on the airplane, right? When they tell you to put your mask on before someone else's, because if you pass out, you're no help to them.
Yeah.
And if you fall apart because you have failed to address, to acknowledge, to help yourself, then you're not good. You're no good to your family. And so there's an inherent balance that needs to be struck. It's not that we should, as men, shouldn't, should be, we shouldn't tend towards, oh, let me throw everything on someone else. It's balance. And that's within the household, right? We should be able to rely on our spouse or our partner for support. And that goes both ways. That is financial, that is emotional, that is everything. It's a stronger foundation if you both have 2 feet on the ground than if you both have 1 foot on the ground trying to push against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just calling it, acknowledging the complexity of what it's like to be human is the first step here. And that goes for grief, but it's a microcosm for life and relationships and reality, and everything that comes along with it. It's not easy. It's not simple. And we're all just trying to do the best we can.
Yep. So to go back to your website stroke app, do they have to join up, or can they just go on ad hoc? Is there a fee? Is there anything that the people need to know?
So we have, there is a fee associated. It's a subscription service. Now there is a 7-day free trial attached with any subscription level. That free trial is all, no holds barred. It is full access to everything. It is as if you have signed up for the highest tier. You can cancel at any time.
Okay.
If you use it for 6 days and it's not working, you cancel, and there's no charge associated with it.
Yep.
Currently, we're also doing some. It is set up so that my offer is, if you do the first 90 days and you actually do the work, meaning in this case, you do 80% of the prompts that you're given. So the different tiers are 3 times a week, 5 times a week, 7 days a week.
Okay, right.
So how frequently and how deep do you want to dive over the next 90 days? Understanding that this is a significant lift, but some people are more motivated than others, and maybe that's not the right word, but some people need more constant touch points and some people don't. But so if you respond and do the work for 80% of the prompts over the first 90 days, you'll get the next 90 days for free.
Oh, that's excellent. That's really good. And can they change the tiers? So say they started on 3 but decided they wanted 5, or they started on 7 and decided they wanted to go down to 3. Can they change that?
At any time.
Excellent.
At any time. It will, and it's it's billed monthly. So if you start your month and then change it, you'll finish out the month currently on the tier that you are on, and then it would change to the next to whatever Excellent. You decide later.
Yeah. And is there social media pages for the app, or is it just a website?
We're on LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. They're all linked from the website itself. At the bottom there, you'll see the links. They're all some variation of Guardian Angels. Again, Angels spelled AIngels. I think TikTok is guardian.angels. Instagram is guardian_angels. So
do you want to send me the links in an email, and then I can put all the links on all my socials, and I can put them on the websites and everything else for you? And then people can just kind of click hyperlinks to go and find the right page.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah.
Is there anything that we've missed out?
Pardon me?
Is there anything that we've missed that people need to know about it?
For the platform, I don't think so. I think I guess so. When you go on there, there's journal prompts, and then you can it prompts you to say, are you ready to journal today? And you can say no and just kind of have a free-form conversation with this persona. So it's not just, but the structure is the thing that I think is going to help most people find their bearings, which is the most important part.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's nice to go and use it for other things, right? It is still AI, so you can you can ask, instead of ChatGPT's personality, it has your friend's personality. Something that was pretty special for me was, Tim was my best friend from childhood, and he knew my wife pretty well. So for our anniversary last year, I asked him what I should do. I said, she likes dumplings. What should I do? We're in Northern Virginia. And he came back and he said, take her to this place. This has the best dumplings, and take her here for ice cream. And, that was just a very special way, as we talk about continuing, what does that relationship look like going forward? It was a very special way to have his presence involved.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways that, I spoke to a gentleman the other day who said, well, I would love to kind of have my mother's recipes in there so that around Christmas time, I can ask for, hey, what was those cookies that you made? And then he can bake those and keep those. So it's great for memory preservation as well. Yeah. At some point we get to the point where we're on our grief journey, and we're moving forward, and we're content with that. And we're doing the work, and we have built this such that we want you, if you are finished with it and have no more need for it, to end your subscription. But we also realize that in those relationships that continue, there are things that we want to do to remain close, and we kind of built that in to enable that.
Yeah, because that's the thing, because it's very hard especially if it's going to be regarding somebody so close to you who holds a very special place in your heart. It will be hard because you've already said goodbye to them in one way, and people maybe don't want to say goodbye again.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to hold on to all the maybe transcripts or whatever else that are in there, everything they've put in. So yeah.
Well, so so I lost Zach 13 years ago. And my memories of Zach, I remember the way he made me feel. I remember that we did this trip. I remember things, but I don't have the clarity of detail that I do with John and Tim. And had I had this tool 13 years ago, I would, because it would be able to tell me exactly what I put in there 13 years ago. And so there's that, I think one of the biggest impediments to us embarking on the journey that is healing is we're afraid that moving on means forgetting. And that's why I don't like the terminology moving on. That's why I don't like the word closure. I think we're moving forward. I think we're finding resolution.
Yep.
Because, as soon as we can dispel the idea that we no longer have a relationship with this person and we're going to forget them when we heal, then we can give ourselves permission to heal, because it doesn't mean we have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is another way to help with that.
Yeah. And everybody's got different beliefs as well about afterlife, whether it exists or whether it doesn't. So especially people that maybe do believe that afterlife exists, this may be something that helps them with that, because then they might start to see these signs. We lost a friend a few months ago, and everything was kind of purple and butterflies at her funeral. Butterflies was all over her coffin. It was on pamphlets, whatever. And then from about 2 days later, I think it was, so that was a Thursday we buried her, and then on the Saturday, I started seeing a white butterfly everywhere. And it was almost as if it was following me, circling me. I came out the supermarket, and it was at my car. And then it was in my garden when I was hanging up washing. This white butterfly just seemed to be everywhere. And it's one of the things where you're like, no, definitely. So I'm writing a book about from our teenage years right up. And on the cover, I've made sure there's a butterfly, because I do genuinely believe she's then into the next life became a butterfly. So this will definitely help people in different ways.
Yeah, those signs are there. You say that, and so John was from Cape Cod. They love their lobsters up there. He had this stuffed animal lobster that we all knew about, and so lobsters have always been associated with him in my mind. And when my son was born, a person there's no way they knew about that. A family friend of my wife's gave us this little outfit for my son, and it was lobsters, and so it was just, that's John. He's showing up, and he's still going to be Uncle John,
100%,
in a different way. And man, that the
it
smile
gets you
that
when you
brought,
don't realize it. It just kind of gets you, and you start
yeah, it's special. It brings that smile. Yeah, you get a little teary eyed, but in a good way. And that 100%. Smile, it's just, hey, buddy, you're there.
And I think to remember all the good memories that you've got with this person, it definitely does help. It might take a bit of time to get to that point, but it definitely helps remembering there was good times. And although you don't feel good at the minute when you think about that person, you will cherish those memories in time.
I couldn't agree more. And that's been one of the major reframes and understanding of what grief is for me. Is I've asked myself, and I ask other people, would you rather have had the relationship that you did with this person and feel the pain you feel now? Or would you rather have not had that relationship and this doesn't hurt as much?
Yeah.
And I would be shocked. I know my answer. And I've just, that when I frame it that way, I feel lucky for the time that I got with these wonderful people. And I would never trade it for anything, even if it means that it hurts this bad. And that the reason it hurts this bad is only because you know, the level of pain is equal to the love that was shared while they were here.
Yeah,
and
and
that's
there's a phrase, and it's the person may die, but the memories live on forever, and that's something that we need to hold on to. Memories
Amen.
will never die. As long as you can remember, memories will never die.
Amen.
Is there anything else you would like to tell us today?
No, I think we've covered it. We've talked about, guardian angels and how we want to help people. We've really gotten deep and just shared some beautiful stories about our
Oh,
own
definitely.
experiences and what this means in this universal, one of the only truly universal experiences that people have, and that, as painful as it is, there's also some beauty in it if you look at it the right way. So
100%. Definitely.
thank you for
No,
having me.
thank you so much for coming on. If you ever want to come on again and talk about if it expands or if there's anything else you've got, you're more than welcome. But if you want to email me over all the details, I'll make sure they're on all the socials and everywhere. I'll put them on my website and everything for you as well.
I'll do that. Thank you very much.
No worries. Have a nice day and have a nice Christmas.
Likewise. God bless.
I'll let you know what date this is going to come out, and once you email me, I'll email you back. I'll look at the dates and everything, and then I'll let you know exactly what date it's going to go out for you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Have a nice day.
Likewise. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. So yes, that was John. He is so nice, and I 100% think that this app is going to help so many people. I know it's not an app as yet; it is a website. I will put all the details on both social medias for the Reboot Sanctuary and Reboot Your Thoughts podcast. I'll also add a little bit on the Reboot Sanctuary's website, which is theRebootSanctuary.com. If anybody is struggling with grief, please speak to somebody, whether it be somebody close to you or if you go and speak to somebody professional, and have a look at the website. It may help you, and it might be that that's your stepping stone before you actually go for therapy. If you ever need therapy, not everybody's going to need therapy through grief, but just knowing that there's something there where you can put your thoughts out is amazing. And like I said, I'll get all the details out to you. I hope you all are having a lovely Christmas, and you are all taking care of each other, looking out for each other, and I will speak to you all soon. Bye.